All right, let's talk about an empire. There's this one company, this one idea, really, that quietly runs a massive piece of the internet you use every single day. And no, it's not Google, it's not Amazon, and it's not Meta. It's WordPress. And honestly, its story is one of the most unlikely and fascinating tales in the history of the web.
I mean, just look at this number, 43%. That's not just blogs, that's 43% of the entire internet. From tiny personal websites to the massive corporate pages for giants like Salesforce and even Meta. One piece of software is behind it all. That scale is it's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a free open source tool, originally just for bloggers, grow up to become this dominant force that literally shapes our digital world? Well, the answer is a wild ride involving a frustrated student, a couple of game-changing decisions, and a business model that is, frankly, brilliant.
To really get the WordPress story, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going back to the early 2000s, a time when just getting your thoughts online was still a pretty nerdy technical challenge.
So this whole thing didn't start with some grand vision for world domination. It started with a problem. There was this popular blogging tool called b2/cafelog, and its developer just disappeared. The project was abandoned. This left all its users, including a young blogger from Houston named Matt Mullenweg, totally stranded. So in 2003, he and another developer from the UK, Mike Little, decided, hey, we can do this better. They took that old code and decided to build something new on top of it.
And what they built grew up fast. But there were two key moments that changed everything. In 2004, they introduced plugins. Suddenly, any developer, anywhere, could add new features. Then, in 2005, themes came along, letting anyone completely change the look and feel. These weren't just updates, they were transformations. WordPress went from being a simple tool to a platform, kind of like a giant box of digital Legos you could use to build almost anything you could imagine.
Okay, so before we go any further, we have to stop and clear up the single most confusing thing about WordPress. I promise you, once you get this, the entire empire and its business model will just click into place.
So here's the secret. WordPress isn't one thing. It's a dual ecosystem. There are two very different, but deeply connected, things that both go by the name WordPress. And this is the absolute best way to think about it. You've got WordPress.org. Think of this as the recipe for a delicious cake. It's totally free, it's open for anyone to see, you can download it, you can mess with it, and you can bake that cake yourself. Then you have Automattic, the for-profit company Matt Mullenweg founded. Automattic runs WordPress.com, which is like a giant restaurant chain. They take that same free recipe, they bake the cake for you. They handle the hosting, the security, all the cleanup, and they sell you a perfect slice. So, you see how this works? This two-part system is the engine that allowed free software to build a billion-dollar commercial powerhouse right on top of it. It's genius. The for-profit side, Automattic, makes its money in a few key ways. First, they sell subscriptions on WordPress.com for folks who want that easy restaurant experience. They also own WooCommerce, which is a massive e-commerce plugin, and they take a little piece of the transactions. Then, they sell powerful premium plugins like Jetpack for security and performance. And for the big guys, they have WordPress VAP, a super high-end service for huge companies.
Now, since Automattic is a private company, we don't have their exact books, but this gives us a pretty good idea of where the money comes from. You can see how diversified it is. They're making money from individual bloggers all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. They've basically built a whole bunch of different businesses all on top of that one free recipe.
So what stops a competitor from just swooping in? What's WordPress's real defense? Well, it's not the code itself, it's the ecosystem. You've got a global army of developers constantly making it better. You've got over 60,000 plugins and themes out there. If you can dream it, someone's probably built a way to do it. That massive market share creates this powerful feedback loop. Developers learn it because that's where the jobs are, and because it's been around forever, Google's search algorithms just love it, which gives it a huge leg up.
So how does it really stack up against the newer guys like Wix, Squarespace, or Shopify? Well, you can see a clear pattern here. The competition is definitely easier to use out of the box. But you're trapped in their walled garden. You play by their rules. The core value of WordPress has always been freedom and ownership. Yeah, it can be a bit harder to learn, but the trade-off is you can do anything you want with it, and you can pick up your entire site and move it anywhere. It's the difference between renting a really nice apartment and owning the entire building.
But look, a story of this much growth, this much power, it's never that simple. Dominating nearly half the web comes with some incredible responsibilities and, well, some pretty major problems.
Its legacy is really a tale of two extremes. On one hand, its greatest triumph is that it genuinely democratized publishing. It gave a voice to millions and created a multi-billion-dollar global economy of developers, designers, and creators. But its biggest troubles are just as huge. Its popularity makes it the #1 target for hackers on the planet. And its history is filled with some deep, painful fights within its own community.
And no conflict was bigger or more revealing than the Gutenberg disruption. This wasn't just a software update. People called it a civil war, a battle for the very soul of WordPress that pitted its founder against the same community that built his empire.
So here's the deal. By 2018, that classic WordPress editor, it was starting to feel old, especially compared to the slick, drag-and-drop builders from competitors. Matt Mullenweg saw this as a life-or-death threat, and he pushed through a radical, top-down change, a totally new, modern block editor called Gutenberg. The problem? Millions of people had built their entire careers and businesses around that old editor. The change was abrupt and, most importantly, it was forced on them. To many, it felt like a total betrayal of the open, community-first spirit that made WordPress so special.
And if you want to see the backlash, just look at this number. This isn't a sales figure. This is a protest. Over 5 million installations of a plugin called Classic Editor. Its only job? To turn off the new Gutenberg editor and bring the old one back. It was a massive digital middle finger from a huge chunk of the user base.
At the end of the day, I think the technologist Anil Dash summed up the story of WordPress perfectly with this quote. It's a powerful tool. It's been used to build cathedrals, giving a platform to journalists in repressive countries and helping activists organize. But it's also been used to smash windows, powering misinformation sites, spam networks, and all sorts of nasty stuff. Its greatest strength, its openness, is also its greatest weakness. And that really leaves us with this one big, final question to chew on. When a single piece of software, a single ecosystem, becomes this powerful, when it runs nearly half of our connected world, is that a triumph of open-source democracy? Or have we accidentally built a giant, single point of failure for the future of the web?